Yeah, friends, welcome you all. Professor Patrick is here, who is going to be the resource person for this technical session 3 on, what is the title? Professor Patrick is going to talk about selecting right statistical tools for analysis and data report preparation or report writing. Yeah. And before we start the session, I would take the opportunity of introducing our resource person, Professor Patrick, who is well qualified with the MCOM, MBA, PhD, and also NET in commerce as well as management. And he is the professor at the Department of Commerce, University College of Commerce and Business Management, Usmania University since 2007. And he served as additional controller of examinations, Joint Director Admissions, and several other positions. And right now, he is the Public Relation Officer, PRO of the Usmania University, having more than 25 years of teaching and research experience. Professor Patrick has done with several modules on MOOC courses, and also is a corporate trainer, providing training for on critical thinking, analytical skills, learning resources, and so on at several universities and institutions. Professor also has an interaction with the foreign universities and institutions. He worked for Ethiopia for a couple of years, and then other countries as a faculty member and resource person for various seminars and webinars. And professor has good number of publications. He has guided several PhD scholars. And in terms of, to conclude about Professor Patrick, he is abundant of knowledge and resources. So let us make use of his expertise in 1 hour. And he is going to talk about, not much about the statistical tools that are used at doctoral level, but I request Professor Patrick to give emphasis on what are the small technical tools that can be used at project report level, which is micro study. We all of us know it is not MPhil degree, it is not PhD degree where we have to use half a dozen statistical tool depending on the objectives and the necessity of the work. But here, what I request all of you, supervisors, students, more particularly our resource person, Professor Patrick, where to use t-test, z-test, small tests. But nowadays, we are making use of statistical tools is a mandatory in project report because we want to increase the quality of the project report. So that is the intention behind this. So I request you to suggest them for which title, topic of research, what suitable tool can be used, how to use, where to use, how to interpret in brief manner. So we are not asking you to use multiple, at least 1 or 2. So I think our requirement is very well taken by Professor Patrick, who is the resource person for this. And Professor Patrick has done with many projects and publication of books and so on and so forth. So thank you, Professor Patrick, for accepting our invitation and being with us today. I am very happy to see you today's session. And now Professor Patrick will continue the session. Please, Professor Patrick, please start your session. And now, from now, you can take 50 minutes so that...
I have to take my watch.
3 o'clock, is it okay, madam? Up to 3 o'clock. So, 1 hour, 10 minutes, no problem. Preferably 1 hour, but even 5-10 minutes over here and there, no problem. Now, Professor Patrick, please start.
Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah, 5-10 minutes, okay, because anyway, I have next session is mine. So I will adjust, don't worry about it. Yeah, please carry on.
Sir, good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon, ma'am. Kiran, my ma'am. Am I audible, sir?
Voice రావట్లేదు.
Am I audible? Hello.
Yeah, you are audible, sir.
Yeah,
yes, sir, you are audible.
Thank you. Thanks a lot for that introduction, which was given by Anand Pawar, sir. I find an elder sister there, Kiran, my ma'am, and a lot of other people that are there in the group. I'm told that I'm audible to others there. So I'll just get along with the session. I believe Nagesha Rao sir said about why project you all, and Anand Pawar sir shared with you all as to how do you write a project. And there are a lot of other topics that are in store after me as well. And I really love this part where you're going to do this case study. And I'm also waiting for my friend Naeem, who teaches at TIC5. We have done together a lot of programs at a lot of places. So he's going to talk on HR, and there's a lot of other professors going to talk about operations and marketing and finance and whatnot. So I'm here it was so nice that Pawar sir has set the tone and cautioned me to tone down on the number of tools that I'll be using. He asked me not to go about teaching tools which I used at a MPhil level or a PhD level, but things which can be done by students at an
तुम्हारे
MBA level.
शर्ट्स ये तो दोनों वही पहन लेके चलते या वो पहनते लाल है ना बोले वो पहनते हैं तो नंगे रंग की चॉकलेट
Xiaomi phone किसी का है
कोई
मोबाइल
जरूरत
से kindly put your mobiles on mute.
आजा बस
I find someone with the Xiaomi phone, your audio is on, so probably
बहुत बुरी आदत हो जा रही फोन चेक करने की, खास तौर पे मेरा फोन, जिसका दिल में आया
Kishore or
फोन
somebody
को
will
देख रहे ऐप खोल रहे पढ़ ले रहे, मैं
participant.
क्या बदतमीजी है ये।
Sayeda Iram Fatima, please go on mute.
Okay, I'll get back. The thing is, today, you have plethora of tools which are available online. A lot of softwares are there. But let me tell you that you have to go about with choosing a tool. You have to do the choice of the tools yourself. And it is not the system which will go about it selecting by itself there. And data by itself doesn't speak anything. And you will have to go about with drawing meaningful interpretations of the data. So you'll have to work on it. We have done some basic courses in school, knowing what is statistics. We have calculated measures of central tendency. We have done a lot of that stuff there, correlation, regression, time series, index numbers. Maybe at a PG level, you do have a paper on statistics for management, where you learn about what is inferential statistics. It starts with probability. It gets little into probability distributions like binomial, Poisson, normal. Teaches you about hypothesis testing. At an MBA level, you are taught things like what is a Z-test, what is a T-test, what is chi-square, what is ANOVA. There's a basic classification of what is parametric, what is non-parametric tools of analysis. But still we find students confused as to where they use which kind of tools then. It's to do with the World Cup fever, and I was just checking the score which Australia has made a little while ago, and New Zealand has to defend or will have to chase that score there. See, if I would ask somebody to tell me, what is the jersey number of Virat Kohli? I don't know. I don't want you to unmute there, but the number is 18. Why is it 18? If I ask anyone, you would have umpteen number of answers, but the reason is his father died on that date. And he's got a fashion line after that number called 18. When you all are registered, either as guides or as, as scholars or as whatever PhD or MBA work that you're doing there, you all have what is called as a hall ticket number or a roll number. Why is this number given to you? You are not there to go about with trying to do any calculations on your roll number. Your roll number is meant for your identification, right? Now, suppose I have to enter the participants who are there in this group as to who are the males and who are the females there. Male is 1 and female as 0. It is a binary kind of a classification I make. And it's only for classification. I can't do any calculations on it. So your choice of your tools depends on your objectives. It depends on the nature of data. What exactly you want, the size of the sample. There are a lot of things that are there which influences how do you go about with selecting the tools that are there. Now, let me get a little into trying to share with you as to, I have a presentation with me. Someone will have to confirm if my presentation is visible to you. Is it visible?
Yes, sir. Visible, sir.
Okay. Thank you so much. Okay, thank you so much. Okay, thank you so much. and also tell if I'm able to change my slides or not. I'm going to talk on this topic. So, anywhere you do research, you talk of identifying the problem, you review literature, you set research questions, objectives, and hypotheses, you choose a study design, you decide on the sample part, collecting data, processing and analyzing data, and you write the report. Probably why research, that is where Nagesh Rao sir spoke. And about writing a report, I think Pawar sir did his job. And I'm here to go about with speaking a few things to you. And we all know this there. I mean, the larger part that you have is the population. The smaller part that you have is to do with the sample. And what we do normally in research is, it is not feasible for us to study the entire population. So we go about with studying a part of the population. That is what we call it as the sample. Now, I want you to go about with getting very clear about these symbols that we go about with using. Few things you got to remember, that population related information is called as a parameter and sample related information is called as a statistic. And let me tell you, most of the tools that you use in your MBA exam or for the project, the symbols are more or less similar here. If it is size, I would call it as N, capital N, for a population, and for a sample, I will say it is small n. If it is mean, I would say mu for a population and x bar for a sample. If it is proportion, I would call it as pi, and if it is for sample, I call it small p and capital P for population actually. For variance, we call it as sigma square. We don't use what is called as standard deviation when it comes to sample. So we call it as standard error. So here we say S square. S square is the standard error square. Standard deviation, we indicate with the symbol of sigma. And for sample, we indicate it with S. Correlation is rho, and for sample, it is R. Regression, we call it as B, which is beta. And this is how the symbols vary. Now, you have to be very clear about a few things. Now, as Pawar sir has rightly said that you're not going to do a very huge project. You have to be very clear in defining what is your sample size. I go about looking at this word called margin of error. I mean, your confidence level is 99% and 95%. Niranjan Garu, Dr. Niranjan Garu, can you put it on mute? Okay. Now, what is this 1% and 5%? Let us make it very clear. Maybe at a little later stage, I'll speak about, or somebody has already told you, there is something called as the type 1 error. What is type 1 error again? The hypothesis being right and you reject it. All right. So we look at it as to what are the steps that are there when we do a hypothesis testing and how do we go about with the choice of tools for doing research. So, the chances of committing a type 1, what is type 1 error I've said? When you are trying to interpret the data, there are two errors that we make. That is the result being right and we reject it, and it being wrong and we accept it. Okay. I won't say the word result. I'll say the hypothesis. What is hypothesis? It is a tentative conclusion. So what is tentative conclusion? I'll come to it a little later. But these are if the population size is there and based on the confidence level, and if it is 99% or 95% there, what should be the samples? And let me say, if the population size is 10,000 and more, we say it is infinite. If it is 10,000 and less, we call it finite. Finite is something which can be counted upon. Infinite, can't be counted upon. And when we talk about figures like 1 lakh, 5 lakh, 10 lakhs and above, you see, there's not much of a change in the size of the sample you'll have to select there. But normally at a project level, probably you would do it. But I would still tell you, don't think about getting a project shelved to just doing the Viva and forgetting about it. You can get it published as well. And they look for research vigor. And I would say that if it is 99% you're going to, then by using a Google form and other things, you can actually collect big. Now, this is where I went about taking it from Qualtrics. These are some screenshots which I've taken, what is called as the sample size calculator. Now, look at it. The confidence level is 95%. You can all go through this website, which is called qualtrics.com, trics.com. Later, I'll share this material either with Kishore or with our Professor Pawar sir, and probably he'll share it with you at a later stage. I have a small write-up of this thing which I've collected from this group, and I've taken the screenshots. Look at it. The population size is 10,000. The confidence level is 95. The margin of error is 5%. The ideal sample size is 370, what we have seen in the previous slide. Yeah. And what I'm doing is I'm changing the population size. When I make it 1 lakh, it makes it 383. Okay. This is what I get from the table also. 383. If I could move my cursor there. Now, what I have is, if I make it 10 lakhs, it is 384. Now, let's get into, that was little on the symbols. Please remember the word parametric. Please remember the word statistic. Population-related information is called parameter. Sample-related information is called statistic. I told you if the population size is 10,000 and more, you call it infinite. If it is 10,000 and below, we call it finite. And you have to be very clear. If you want to draw conclusions where you can make generalizations and other things there, you have to be careful about the sample size. Now, in any domain, the word research is domain general. It is not domain specific. You do research in management, you do it in commerce, you do it in political sciences, anthropology, sociology, medicine, engineering. The word research remains same. Maybe the approach and the orientation will be different. Now, if I put this research cycle, I say it is cyclical in nature. Now, what do I mean by that is, the word observation is not merely through our eyes. We have 5 sense organs with which we receive stimuli. We process that information and we attach meaning to that information there. And what we observe may be right or may be wrong. So when I observe something, we all learned it in OB. If you're an MBA student, organizational theory and behavior, only organizational behavior, you study that, we receive stimuli, we process it in our mind, and we attach meaning to something what we observe. So the meaning we attach may be right or wrong. Now the meaning I attach, I want to check whether it is right or wrong. So what we go about talking about status quo, no change, no effect kind of a thing, we call it the null hypothesis. And what we want to go about with proving and disproving, we call that as the alternate hypothesis. Now the word hypo, there are a lot of doctorates in this group as well. I know there are PhD as well as the MBA guides who are here. What you notice is, when you have submitted to get the degree from the university, what you have submitted is thesis. Hypo is tentative. Hypo is temporary. Now just look back in our school days when there was a person who said an atom looked more like a watermelon, where seeds are scattered just the way the electrons are scattered in an atom, just like seeds are scattered in a watermelon, he said. But later on, somebody came and disproved it, right? Maybe I have some more hypotheses that I will share it with you today. I was reading certain things, the doctor goes about suspecting. I tell him I have fever. He looks at the symptoms and he gives fever, the medicine for the symptom, and he wants to confirm which type of fever is it. Is it to do with COVID or dengue or typhoid or malaria or viral? That will be proved after you do the test, right? Now that is where we talk about the experimentation part. And this experimentation is of 2 types. One is called deductive, one is called as inductive. When you move from general to particular, when you study the entire population and you tell about one individual, you call it deductive. When you study about one individual and what holds good for that one person holds good for the entire population, when you're trying to make a generalization, you call that as inductive. What is conclusion? What we come out with saying that this is final or this is what I prove or disprove. Somebody observes something in that and the cycle will continue. And this is what we call it as the research cycle. Let me make one assumption. Like, let's say we have this person who has purchased Twitter and now he calls it as X, or he goes about with running a company called Tesla, which is more into cars. And he's saying that, it's time that he goes about taking people from the Earth and starts making them to locate on Mars. The question is whether there is life on Mars or not, right? So the null hypothesis, there is no life on Mars. And according to Elon Musk, he said there is life on Mars. So there's a lot of experiments which are going on, and we are yet to prove whether there's life on Mars or not, right? Now, this is where I said about what is deductive approach. When I go from general to particular, that is population, or I do a census study. And most often, when we go about, we're doing our research there, we do what is called as inductive study there. That is from a particular to general. And this is what the entire process that is involved. They say that a problem well understood is half solved. So first and foremost, you got to identify what the problem is. If you can articulate and put it into words and spell it out, I'll tell you half your problem is solved. Next, research cycle we have said. The thing is, we are not here to duplicate. If somebody has done something, we are not supposed to do the same thing. Where they have left, what they could not do. If you read any research article, if you read any project work, in the end, they will tell you there is something called as limitations. Now, their limitations can become your objectives. So what we do is we do literature review. The basic idea of literature review is to identify what are the gaps that are there in existing literature. Now, based on that, we develop what is called as hypothesis. We prepare a research design, which is a blueprint for the research. So what do you have in a research design? What is going to be your sources of data? What are the tools of analysis that you will use? What is your sample size? What is your sampling method? Whether you use univariate, bivariate, or multivariate tools of analysis, what is going to be a scope of your work? All that you will mention in your research design. So once you have said whether you'll go for random, non-random kind of sampling, or what we call probabilistic and non-probabilistic, you collect the data, then you go about executing, you do the analysis of data. Now, Professor Prabhar has given me a task of telling you that I need to share on this part. That is step number 8. How do you do the analysis? How do you do the hypothesis? How do you interpret the data? And Professor Pawar has already spoke to you about how do you prepare a report there. So I'm here to tell you how do you choose the tools of analysis. Now, this is a concept that you have. You must know how to go about with identifying. Let's say somebody said rich. What do you mean by riches? Is it an income or the assets they possess? And what are the variables? These are two words that you have to get very clear. What goes about, things which can be measured and expressed in terms of numbers, we call it variable. And things which you can't express in numbers, we call it as an attribute, right? What is the decision? Will you say anybody who has got less than 1 lakh is a poor person, and anyone who has got more than 25 lakhs is a rich person? And how do you go about with working out? Suppose someone is saying that you study very well, you have an academic achievement. So what are that average marks? How much did you score in the practicals? What is your aggregate? What is your percentage? If you get less than 75, what do you call? Above 75, or if it is less than 80, what do you call it? Now, if you're talking about effectiveness of a health program, or let us say Pawar sir will circulate to you all a feedback form of how Nagesh Rao sir spoke, how he has spoken, how did I speak, or the next speaker is going to speak, how was the case study sessions went on. So is there a change in you before you attended the training on project work and the case study? Or were you able to figure out which tools are to be applied, how to write, and all those things there? So this is something which we look into the decision part of it. Now, I'm here to caution on a few things there. Most often, I find students writing wrong objectives, and I'm here only to caution, like, what are the terms that you'll use in writing your objectives? So the acceptable words for objectives, I would tell you, is like telling words like to examine, to analyze, to determine, to explore, to evaluate, to assess, to estimate, to identify, to compare, to establish. This is the prefix to that we write. But please observe, and I would only exhort and request you, please avoid such kind of words like to find, to study, to understand. It is your personal understanding. People want to go about with building something on what you found. So here, don't use such words like to know, to explain. And this is also another word that people tend to use when they write their object, to suggest. See, the outcome of your work is to give recommendations and suggestions. So to provide suggestions cannot become your objective, right? So please avoid. I'm going to share this PPT. So you would go about with looking at it once, twice to see what words are to be used and what words are not to be used. What these words are. There is another question that people go about asking. Like, should you use hypothesis testing or not? I'm going to do that. But let us say you use the word examine. What do you mean by that? You're talking about the reason why you're doing the project. To analyze when you say. you're trying to figure out what is the cause and effect or impact. When you use the word establish, you're talking about relationship and pattern. When you use the word measure, you're trying to figure out if there is an impact of, there are some causes or there are some factors influencing something. So that is where you use the word. Now, let me make it very clear. If your objective has got these characteristics of being very clear and it is complete, it is very specific, it is not general, then you can do what is called as a descriptive statistics or descriptive study. But let us say that you have to identify the main variable that is to be correlated. So you'll have to do some correlation study. And you want to identify the direction of the relationship as well. Then that is where you require what is called as a hypothesis studies that are there. So please ask yourself, do I need a hypothesis? Is it that people, those who do what is called as project work, you can do it without a hypothesis? Yes, you can do it. Nothing wrong with that. But what we look for is there is a course which is taught. That is statistics and management. You are learning parametric, non-parametric. Again, a review of a few descriptive statistic tools are made. Can you go about with applying it in your project? Can you go applying it in your case studies that you do there? So this is something which you'll have to look into. So what is a statistical hypothesis? Sometimes we call it as a confirmatory data analysis. It is something which is testable. And I said it is based on my observation. I draw a tentative or a temporary conclusion. And I'm trying to go about with analyzing. So there is null hypothesis where I use a simple as HO. Alternate hypothesis, I say H1 or HA. Now, hypothesis which is opposed to the purpose which I'm trying to work is called null. So it always talks about status quo, no change, no effect. And this is the hypothesis what I'm trying to study. And this is what I want to claim it to be right or at times wrong there. So that's the basic difference between the word null and alternate. So let's look at this example. Let's say all students getting into an informatics class. These days you're talking about data informatics, right? Data analytics are statistical experts. So that is alternate. Now here I'll say, see, look at this word, negating, do not. I say all students converging into informatic classes do not know statistics. Okay. So here I say status quo. And here when it comes, I want to prove this. So I take against the null. So here it is always no, it does not improve, does not change, no effect, no impact. These kind of words, you find it more in the alternate. Another thing, you have your objectives. If you want to prove your objectives empirically, that is where you use hypothesis testing. If there is no need for doing any empirical testing, so you don't have to do an hypothesis testing there. Next thing, now look at it. There was a problem in 1970 that 20 to 29-year-old India had a mean height of mean weight of 170 and standard deviation of 40, which means whether it will be 210 or it will be 130. Okay, that is plus or minus how we look at it. So null hypothesis, we say mean is 170. And alternate hypothesis, we say that mean can be greater than 170 or it is not equal to. Now look at these words very carefully. Yeah? Like students even at an MBA level get confused as to what is the directional test and non-directional test, or what is one tail and what is two tail. When I use a greater than or less than sign, I call it directional. I call it as a one-sided or a one-tail test. When I use a not equal to symbol, it can be less than or equal to. So it can be less than or equal to 170. So I'll say it is a two-sided test that is there. So from a population, I am trying to take a small sample. I use statistical tests on this sample and the conclusions I draw, what holds good for the sample, I say holds good for the entire population. So what holds good for the sample holds good for the population when I say, now that is what I call it as generalization. So I said, what is an hypothesis? It is a way of interpreting or drawing conclusions about a population using sample data. So there are two mutually exclusive statements about a population there. So what is to be rejected? So we say a person is innocent or a person is guilty. Now let us say that there is something, I don't want to quote anything, but there is a lot of this kind of us going on in the news, like a politician has taken money to go about it asking questions, I would say that she is accused. She or he is not guilty unless and until proven guilty then, right? So that is what we believe in hypothesis testing. So the general goal of a hypothesis test to rule out a chance or something which is a sampling error. So it is like a technique which will help you determine whether a specific treatment has an effect on individuals or a population there. So you look at it, there is a population. We take a sample, we call it as X bar, and we draw an inference. If it's a population, we call it mu. And these are the steps that are there. Like step one is you go about formulating or defining a problem and other things there. Then you talk about selecting a test and you tell what is the level of significance. The level of significance is nothing but the type 1 error. I've already told you what it is. We look at it in the later stages also. You collect the data. You go about it telling what statistical thing, based on it's parametric or non-parametric. Let me tell the words very clearly. If a sample is drawn from a population whose population characteristics are known, what are the characteristics? Size, mean, standard error or standard deviation, or it's to do with the proportion. If you know the population characteristics, and from such a population you're drawing a sample, and on such a sample, if you apply statistical tools, we call it the parametric test. Now you have a sample, but you don't know to which parent population it belongs to. And on such a sample, if you apply statistical tools, you call it the non-parametric test. So you'll choose a test, whatever it is there, and you'll determine with that alpha, whether it falls in the acceptance region or the rejection region. So if the calculated value falls in the rejection region, we say the null hypothesis is rejected. If it is beyond the rejection region, we say the null hypothesis is rejected. So it can be marketing, it can be finance, it can be HR, but it can be in any field. You'll get what is called as the hypothesis testing, right? Now, so we talk about a stage which is called as formulation of hypothesis. So I told you what is null hypothesis. So it is not to be rejected, no changes will be made. So it is something to do with where we say we accept the effect and other things. So here it is where I talk about what is type 1 and type 2. This will be a revision for your MBA as well as for the project work. So decision that is there, you take in the end to reject or accept that. Fail to reject is nothing but accepting. This is what you do in the last step, right? Reject or do not reject. So here what you have is the hypothesis is true and the decision is to reject it. We call this to be as a type 1 error. And hypothesis is, true, but you don't reject it. It's nice, nothing wrong. True it is. But hypothesis is false and you reject the hypothesis. I mean, you accept the hypothesis. Fail to reject is accepted. A little bit of extra English there. Reject, accept it. Okay? You fail to reject, which means you accept. Reject is you say no. Now, when you fail to reject, you say yes. So here you're talking about type 2 error, which is beta. Now, there is something I said about innocent, guilty, convicted, and other things that are there. So what is type 1? When occurs when sample results lead to rejection of a null hypothesis, and in fact, it is true. Okay. And it can be controlled. And this is where we talk about level of significance, or what we call it as alpha when we do our hypothesis testing. And type of 2 error is based on sample results and is not rejected when it is actually false. The fact is it's false. Type 2 errors are equivalent to false negatives, as we call it. Now we talk about type 1 error, which is denoted by alpha. And if we take 5%, then what do I mean by that is the chances of not committing a type 1 error is 0.05. 100, 5 divided by 100 is 0.05, which means 5% chances are there that we will commit a type 1 error or reject a null hypothesis, which is true. So be careful about this alpha. I mean, why we don't use beta is we don't start with a negative. That is, we don't say a person is guilty, then we prove he's innocent. We start with the premise that a person is innocent, and then we try figuring out whether the person is guilty on whatever evidence is available. Or it could be any other statistical tool on which you're trying to do it in the area of marketing, finance, HR, or operations that is there. You want to use hypothesis testing for it. Now, the test could be that there is a Z test. Normally, we say if the sample size is 30 or more, you call it as a large sample. If it is less than 30, we say it is a small sample. If it is large sample, we use Z test. If it is a small sample, we use T test. And in Z-test and T-test, there are 5 types of Z-test, 3 types of T-tests. But the kind of limitation that you have a Z-test and a T-test is you can't go about with testing more than 2 variables simultaneously. So ANOVA or F-test goes about permitting you to check more than 2 samples or more than 2 populations simultaneously. And that is where we use an F-test or an ANOVA. And chi-square is a non-parametric test. I already told you, when we don't have a clue about the population parameters, or we don't know anything about the characteristics of a population, on such a sample, when we apply statistical tools, we call it the non-parametric test that we have. And chi-square is one of them, and chi-square is used for checking association between attributes. I've told you what that is there, right? Association. I told you the word attribute and variable a little ago. Now, this is something like, what sir was trying to tell me, like for a MBA project, what can be done? Like, chi-square doesn't come here. It comes under non-parametric, actually. There's something erroneous with the figure. So we have parametric test and we have the non-parametric. Again, to reiterate, what is parametric and what is non-parametric? Parametric are those where I know the population characteristics. And on such, when I apply the statistical tools on samples, I call it the parametric test. When I don't know the population characteristics and I have a sample and I have to take a decision based on that sample whose population characteristics are unknown, I call it the non-parametric test. So here, if I have one sample and one population, I use chi-square or run test or Mann-Whitney U-test, Kruskal-Wallis test. A lot of those tests are there. If there is 2 samples, then if the samples are drawn independently or paired samples, I have a sign test, I have a Wilcoxon test, McNamara or a chi-square. If it is independent, I have a chi-square, Mann-Whitney or Kruskal-Wallis. If it is a 2 sample, paired sample, if you look at, I use a pair T. If it is independent, I go for 2 sample T test, I go for a Z test, and I go for a F test. And an analogous non-parametric of an ANOVA or an F test is called as the Kruskal-Wallis test. And there is only one sample, TZ and chi-square. No chi-square here. It's only chi-square and run test. So we talk about the tests and what it is. Now this is where it is. Now what happens to our level of significance or alpha? See, when you say 5%, if it is a 2-tailed test, where 2-tail we take wherein the clue word in the question is, like in the null, we say there is no difference between the sample and population or between 2 samples. And in alternate, we say there is no difference. There is difference, not equal to. I don't use word like greater than or less than. Then I go for a 2-tailed test. So what happens is the 5% gets divided into 2.5 year and 2.5 year. These regions are called as the rejection region. This value which separates the acceptance region from the rejection region is called as the critical value or the table value that we have there, right? So if our answer based on a statistical tool we apply, it falls below this line and below this line, we call that, or we conclude that the null hypothesis is accepted. If it goes beyond this on the right side or below this on the left side, we say the null hypothesis is rejected. And the following steps we go about with working. Now you see for a Z test, for 5% you have 1.96 and you have 2.5 for 1%. For 0.01, we take 3.33 as the thing there, minus Z values are minus there. So I said below this or above this a value goes, the null hypothesis get rejected. If it is within this, we say the null hypothesis accepted. I told you what is critical region. I told you, like, when you take table value, we call it as the table value. I mean, based on what you have behind the statistical textbook. But normally, if you're using any statistical package like Excel, SPSS, and other things there we go about with calling it as the p value. It is based on probability, right? So I told you what is reject if the value exceeds the right or the left. That is falls below minus 1.96 or goes beyond 1.96 plus. We say the null hypothesis rejected. It falls within this. We say the null is accepted. Then we told about what is Z score. So if it is a 1-tailed test, I said this is a left-tailed test. Okay. You see the symbol? Less than. If it is a greater than, I go for the right tail test, right? 2-tail, if you look at, I have what is called as the values that are there wherein it is divided, the rejection region is on either side that you have. I told you what are the words, I mean, normally I would put it this way as a norm. If the question is a positive connoting word, I go for a right tail test. If it's a negative connoting word, I'll go for a left tail test. If it is a neutral connoting word, I'll go for a two-tail test. So I said greater than value, right tail, less than value, left tail. Then not equal to, I'll go about with a two-tail test, right? So I said about the 5% getting divided into 2.5 on the left side and 2.5 on the right side. But if it is a one-tail test, that 5% come entirely on the left side. If it is a right tail test, that entirely comes on the right side. If it is 1%, it is 0.5 here and 0.5 here. Okay. So we're talking about the shopping habits of people there. So we say introduce more than 40%. We say it is less than or equal to, alternate is less, no, greater than. So look at the keyword that is there, more. So we take that greater than symbol. So we do the calculation. If it is a one-tail test, we said about two-tail test, it is equal to and not equal to. Then we have this formula. We go about it applying and we get a calculated value and all that stuff. So we go about with deciding whether to accept it or not. So I said this is the shaded region and unshaded region. So here you had a calculation value and it found an answer and it got it as 1.88. So you look at table values, it tells you what it is. So whether you accept or reject, it was 1.645. So 1.88 is more than that. So we are trying to figure out whether to accept or reject. So our decision is null hypothesis rejected. Why is it rejected? Our calculated value of Z was 1.88, but our table value or critical value was 1.645. Because the calculated value exceeded 1.88, we reject the null hypothesis, right? So write the decision greater than. So calculated value of the test is greater than the critical value. So the null hypothesis is rejected. When he said null hypothesis rejected, what will happen? The alternate gets accepted. So these are some conclusions. So if it is a t-test, there's a difference between sample mean and a population mean divided by the standard error. And here we take what is called as the degrees of freedom, which is 1 less than the sample size, n-1. So be careful when you go about with checking for the table values and other things there. We don't use sigma, rather we use S, which is standard error, which is one of the assumptions of a t-test. Now I just want to run through a few slides telling you how do you choose the tools there. Now here it is like 6 blind men touching the different parts of an elephant and whatever comes in their axis, they say that is right. Someone touches the tail and says rope. Someone touches its body and says it is a wall. Someone touches legs and says trunk. Someone touches its trunk and says it's like a snake. Tusk and says it is like a sword. Ear and says fan. But the thing is they're touching different parts of the elephant. The elephant is one, but no one has got a complete picture. So I'll tell you the same data your friends in MBA are doing project. You give it to another person and another person there. They should get the same results, right? It's not like blind men interpreting with whatever is there handy to them. So this is another way of trying to figure out, like let us tell like what we studied in our UG or degree or school. It is more of descriptive statistics. Now I also told these 3 words, univariate, bivariate, multivariate. So I'm talking about the shape of the curve. I'm trying to find a single value which describes the entire data. You call it as measure of central tendency. It can be a mean, it can be a median, it can be a mode, it can be standard deviation, it can be variance. So those things come under univariate. When I say a single value depends on 2 factors, I call it bivariate. Simple enough. I talk about x on y or y on x, or I'm trying to go about telling y is equal to a plus bx, where y I say is the dependent variable, a I say is the slope of the regression line, b I say is b is the slope, a is the intercept, and x is the dependent variable. Y is equal to a plus bx. Repeat again. Y is the dependent variable, a is y's intercept, b is the slope, and x is the dependent variable. This is a simple regression. Like changing the amount on advertising, can I increase the sales? Sales is dependent on advertisement. But in marketing mix, we talk about more than that. Product, price, place, promotion. people, process, physical evidence, productivity. There are many P's. So if I have to work out a multiple regression, saying that taking all these P's, then I'll say y is equal to a plus b1x1, b2x2, b3x3, it will be an xn. So when I'm talking about multiple factors and still descriptive, I call it as a multivariate analysis. But when I'm talking about inferential, I say if it is applied to means, then I would tell you two groups. When I do ANOVA, ANOVA also says it is test of equality among the means then. So if there are any other statistics, we take it separately there, right? That's a classification here. So this I've told it like out of a sample, we go about when doing data analysis. What holds good for the sample? We draw an inference or conclusion. We say it holds good for the entire population. Another thing you'll have to figure out is your objectives also decides what kind of statistical tools we apply. Is it meant only for describing? In description, we don't talk about the why part of it. Correlational can be one kind of objective. Explanatory, in y is equal to a plus bx, what is dependent, what is independent, what is the slope, or what is y's intercept, if we call it as explanatory. Now, exploratory is you're trying to throw light on the problem and it is not trying to find a solution. So, we tell in research a problem well understood is half solved. So we are trying to understand what the problem is. That is where we do the exploratory part of it. Then. So we are trying to do these kind of studies there. So it is the nature of the objectives which will decide what kind. If it is descriptive, why should we use inferential statistics for it? We have seen some classification here, right? If it is descriptive, why should I go for these kind of tools then? So I'll use descriptive kind of thing. If I have to use correlational, then I'll use bivariate. If I have to do regression, if it is simple, I'll do the bivariate. If it is more than two variables, I'll have to find regression for. I'll do multiple regression. If it is inferential, I'll use other tools that are there. So that is depending on the type of objectives that I have. Now here again, a repeat of the steps that you have. So you formulate a research problem, you do extensive literature review, you develop objectives, you want to check the objectives empirically, you do the hypothesis testing, you do some theoretical modeling, maybe at a PhD level. These days, people are talking about sequential equation modeling, SCM. They talk about a lot of other high-end statistics. ARIMA is there, and a lot of other things are there. But at an MBA level, I would tell you use simple tools, what you've been taught at MBA. I mean, if you're interested learning something beyond it, nothing wrong if you can use. When I came for conducting Viva at Ambedkar Open University, I've seen students have done some high-end statistics. Some of them have used SAS, some of them have used SPSS, some of them have used MS Excel. Nothing like it, right? So, why did I use these two things in bold is to draw your attention that you don't decide the tools of the analysis after you collect the data, but before you collect the data, you'll have to know what is. So I said in research design, you tell what is your sources of data, primary or secondary. I mean, what is going to be a sample size? How do you take the sampling out of the population, random or non-random? Finite, non-finite is for the size. What are the tools of analysis? Univariate, bivariate, multivariate. Now, whether you use descriptive or whether you use inferential. Now, all these things, scope in terms of geography, time, what concepts you would like to test. Now, once you do that, you collect the data. Then you'll have to do a little bit of data cleaning. If the data is incomplete, illegible, or you do what is called a checking for the reliability and consistency, and you would look for generalizability. There are some tests. I wish, irrespective of whether you come from finance or marketing or HR, I'll share a few ebooks with sir. There is one I would always refer to as Marketing Research by Uma Shekaran, or there's another book which is there, which is Market Research by Naresh Malhotra. And they tell you how to design a questionnaire, how to check whether the questionnaire is right or wrong, when to use which tools. It's a beautiful book. I can share the ebook, you go through it, and it can help you out a lot. So I need to go about with removing data which is unnecessary. See, we use a computer principle called GIGO, garbage in, garbage out. So I want to know whether the raw material is right or the data which is entering into my system is right. If the data is wrong, I'll get a wrong output. Garbage in, garbage out. So I do editing to remove unnecessary data. So how do I feed into an Excel sheet? I do coding. And from that, I have to draw them into tables. And then whatever tools I've chosen, univariate, bivariate, multivariate, and a descriptive or inferential, I do the analysis. So I again tell that what holds good for the sample holds good for the population. I do the generalization, all right? Now, types of data, is primary data and secondary data. If you're collecting for the very first time, you call it primary. Collected by somebody else, you're calling it as secondary. Now you have quantitative and qualitative. Mostly in social sciences, where you talk about arts-related subjects that are there, they use qualitative. There's not much of numbers. They use focus group, in-depth interviews, human observation, case studies. But if it is quantitative, probably we use tools that are there for analyzing. These are to collect the data, personal or in-house, or telephone, or use internet and other things. And before you design a questionnaire, please get to it. Again, this is given. I mean, this slide, I picked it up from Naresh Malhotra's PPT only. Just a reminder, I want you to go about, these days politicians are coming out with a lot of surveys and they're trying to sow seeds in the minds of the electorate. So one survey will tell maybe Congress is better off, or BRS is better off, or BJP is better off, or some other party that way. So the thing is, I'm asking somebody's opinion. How do I convert that opinion into a number? So for that, I need what is called a scaling technique. So please focus little on that comparative and non-comparative scaling. Very simple to tell. A Likert scale is a 5-point scale where it says strongly agree, agree, neutral, disagree, disagree. I mean, strongly disagree. Semantic is words opposite, boring, interesting. I mean, tasty, insipid, like that words. Stable is a 10-point scale with no zero in it. So you would do that part of it. And get the words right if what is discrete and what is continuous. When you express your calculations or your survey findings without a decimal, we say it is discrete. I mean, how many people are there in the group? I get a number. I seen pre-lunch, I seen a number called 80. Maybe when I started, I seen 70. So I tell you, it is not 70.1, 70.2 or something there. But when I say your age, your time, I mean, your foot size, or let's say your height or date of birth, when I look at it, it can be represented in decimals. It can be represented. So I call it continuous. Things which can be represented in numbers are quantitative. Things which can't be represented in numbers are called qualitative. When you can measure and express things in numbers, we call it variable. When you can say presence or absence, he's a good person, bad person, he is fair person, dark person. You don't have a scale to measure it. So we use a word called attribute. I started of Virat Kohli. I mean, jersey number. That is nominal. You can't do anything out of 18, what he wears. You can't do anything about Rohit Sharma's jersey number. You can't do anything about KL Rahul, who carries the jersey number 1 on his back there. You can't do anything. It's only to identify. Now, if I'm able to rank the things, I call it ordinal. If I'm able to tell who's there at first place, second place, third place, it is interval. Now, those numbers with which I can do all mathematical calculations, we call it ratio. Now, look at it. This is a slide I've taken from Naresh Malhotra. If the scale is nominal, look at it. How do we apply some examples in marketing? It is based to identify or classify. Now, here we call it Aadhaar number. In US, they call it the social security number. Or football player wearing a jersey, or a cricketer wearing a jersey number. They're meant for identification, classifying. In marketing, how can it be? It can be brand number. It can be a store type. Is it a superstore, supermarket, mega market? Is it a mall, Lulu mall, or some other mall that is there around? We talk about permissible statistical. It is descriptive. When we use percentage and mode. It is inferential. We use chi-square or any other binomial test. Ordinal is for ranking. So basic characteristics, they tell you where do you stand. So we use preference, ranking. Why do you buy a soap? Why do you buy a toothpaste? Why do you shop in a particular shop? Why do you go to a particular hospital? Why do you go to a particular diagnostic center? You have some reasons to tell it. If I would go about with taking Med Plus, for me, I tell you price is a factor. They're giving 70% discount on various tests I do. So I would like to rank, or, they say that Vijay is more accurate. So somebody may prefer that. I may not prefer that. So if it is descriptive, I may use percentile, or the entire data can be divided into 2 halves by using a median. Or I talk about rank order, correlation, a Friedman test, or an ANOVA. Then if it is interval kind of data, look at See, today I opened papers, it said what is maximum, what is minimum. 17 degrees is minimum. 30 degrees is maximum. I can only find range. I can find average, nothing beyond that. So I would like to do some attitude finding or opinion, or most of the sensex and other things comes here. I can do range, I can do mean, I can find standard deviation. I can find moments if it is inferential. If it is ratio, let's say length, weight, or it is determined by age, sales, income, cost, if it is marketing examples, I can find a geometric mean, I can find an harmonic mean. I'm talking about arithmetic. I can find coefficient of variation. Sir said, few tools that are there. Let me tell you, these are all the tools. Most of them you studied in your school and degree. These are tools that you did in your MBA. So you can use these tools to do your project work, more than enough. And I'm talking about another classification, quantitative, qualitative, whether it's ordinal, discrete, continuous, interval, ratio. So, why do we have to analyze the data? If you have to describe and summarize the data, if you have to identify relationship between variables, or you have to compare variables, you have to identify difference between variables, you have to forecast. Why regression is used? It helps you in forecasting, right? And there are some myths which are related with analysis and interpretation. Sometimes people use complex words to confuse, and I think that is not what you do actually. And analysis comes at the end of data. That is wrong. Analysis, you'll have to think the tools of analysis before even you collect the data. Quantitative analysis is most accurate. This is also wrong. I don't say wrong, but it is a myth. You can do qualitative analysis. If that is not there, your social sciences wouldn't have existed then, right? So data has its own meaning. That is wrong. Unless and until you use or apply statistical tools and interpret, you can't draw any meaning. There are limitations that are there. Computer, yes, but at times you can do manually also, nothing wrong. So, there are certain tools. You want to know how many individuals checked an answer. See, I'll give an internal test. I use a Google form. So when I do a Google form, it tells you out of 40 students or 80 students, how many did correct and how many did wrong. It can do a percentage. It can do a pie chart. I want to find what is the average score. All the students totals put together divided by the number of students. Or I want to find out one mark which separates people below that and people above that. I can use a median. Or I want to find the most repeated number, mode. Or I want to find the difference between the highest and lowest. I'll talk about range. And let me make it very clear here. Many people in their questionnaires, they tend to use this cross tabs words. You say whether male or female, income level, literate or illiterate, what is your designation? They just collect and make pie charts. I'll tell you, you can tell that you don't have to collect extra data. Within the given data, you can always do this. Someone is trying to annotate, I'll tell you there by putting a yellow line. This is school kid kind of a thing there. Please don't do that. You all are professional MBA students, so I don't expect you to cross your limits and do that during the presentation. Please refrain from that. I think the person who is there can identify who has done it. It'll be better on your part, you remove it, right? So the thing is, I find a yellow line on my slide that is a slur on the person who did it. Let me go on. I said that the same question asked to men, how did they respond? The same question asked to women, how did they respond? Same question asked for different age groups, how did they respond? To different income levels, based on caste, based on religion, based on the region to which they belong. So I can do that kind of a comparison, and that is what I call it as the cross tab. I can do standard deviation, a lot of other things there. So there is a lot of those, what you call statistical tools that are available, but you don't have to blindly, this is where it says researchers blindly can't do it there. You'll have to figure out what is relevant and what is irrelevant. So you should be able to figure out what are the tests, what stage of analysis you require. So you'll have to ask questions before you choose a tool, like what are the scales of measurement, nominal, ordinal, interval, ratio. Which hypothesis has been tested? Is it relationship or correlation? If the hypothesis is difference, or is it based on dependent or independent samples? How many sets of measures are there? This will tell you whether you can go for a univariate, bivariate, multivariate kind of tests that are there. You'll have to figure out what is the variable type and find out your goal, what you want to work out, what you want to convey by doing that analysis. This must be clear in your mind. So normally, the nominal and ordinal, we use qualitative tools of analysis or descriptive tools. If the nature of data is interval and ratio, we use quantitative. Mostly it is to do with the inferential statistics. hypothesis, other things. So nominal, if it is simple scale measurement, we could talk about gender, race, married, unmarried, what is the stage of the tumor, whether a person is alive or dead. We don't talk about coma there. Ordinal, we talk about what is the stage at which cancer is, advanced or beginning, what kind of chemo is required, what is the pain rating. I had a pain in my knee when it was bruised, and when I went to the health center, he said, on a scale of 10, where do you put your pain? If you tell me 9 or so, you'll have to go for an X-ray. I said it is around 4 or 5. Then he said, do a massage or take some kind of, infrared kind of treatment, and it will get okay. Likert scale, this is what I said, a 5-point scale, which is strongly agree, neutral, disagree, strongly disagree. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I convert an opinion into a number, right? Then if it is interval, it is quantitative. I can add, subtract. I cannot multiply and divide, but there's no true value here. But here, when it is continuous, it is a ratio. It can be blood pressure, it can be length of stay, it can be body weight, age, it is all in decimals. I said if it is nominal ordinal, you use descriptive, and also you apply non-parametric, chi-square and others. If it is interval and ratio, you apply parametric test. That is where you say Z-test, T-test, ANOVA, they come under them. And descriptive, it can be frequency, percentage. You're trying to find the midpoint, measures of variation. Inferential, they're divided into. So this is descriptive statistical tools. Why you do it and other things there. And if it is inferential, we have the non-parametric and parametric. Umpteen number of times, I think I have repeated. If you know about the parent population characteristics, the tools you apply on such a sample is called as parametric. You don't know the parent population characteristics. On such a sample, if you apply, we call it the non-parametric. So here there are other things that are there. Like if it is qualitative, quantitative, nominal, what do you use? Ordinal, what do you use? Binary. Discrete, where you don't apply decimals to it. Continuous, you apply decimals to it. So continuous, I said, categorical, I have said, rating scales we may have. A few more things I would tell. I mean, that will leave my presentation. I'll take some time for question and answer. I think the time that sir has given me is 1 hour. He said you can go up to 3. I'll take it up for question and answer. I'll run through a few slides, just see. First, you check whether the nature of data is nominal. So you'll have to use a non-parametric test. That's what he told you. Do you remember? See, if it is nominal ordinal, non-parametric. If it is interval ratio, parametric. So what we do here, we ask whether the data is nominal, then we say chi-square. If it is ordinal or interval, we say ordinal test, non-parametric again. If it is interval, we say, is the population normally distributed? So maybe you can do that small tests that are there to check whether the data is, see, if you go about with putting it in the form of a graph, does it give a bell curve or does it give the characteristic features of a normal curve? So there we do it. If you say yes, then you can use the parametric. Even if it is interval and ratio, and if the distribution is not normal, you can't apply parametric. You'll have to apply non-parametric. Look at the same thing, U test, H test, T test, Spearman R, the same things come here under non-parametric. Few more things. Parametric, if it's one sample, you say a T test. If it is non-parametric, you use a Wilcoxon rank test. If it is pairedity, that is X1, X2. Sample size is below 30. And here I say Wilcoxon signed rank, or it is unpaired, I use a Mann-Whitney or a Kolmogorov-Spironov test. There I use ANOVA. Here I use Kruskal-Wallis is a non-parametric equivalent of parametric. You have a Joe-Carey, you have a Friedman. This is only for knowledge. If you can apply it, nothing like it. In Excel, if you go, it gives you a plethora of tests that are there to apply. Right. And again, thing I said, p-value. If it is less than 0.01, if you're using Excel, you're using SPSS, you get the results in p-value. But if you're using the values which are given behind statistical textbook, then you will look for Z value, then you'll use for F test value, you'll use a T test value or a chi-square value or other non-parametric test. The result is highly significant. Reject the null hypothesis. If it is between 0.01 and 0.05, result is reject the null. But if the value is greater than 0.05, you say it is not significant. You say don't reject the null hypothesis. Please bear this in mind. If you get a value which is above 0.05 in p-value terms, this happens when you use software. If you get a value which is more than 0.05, don't reject the null hypothesis. But if you get below 0.05 or below 0.01, then you say you reject the null hypothesis. So this is where we use the statistical descriptive statistics and graphs. What kind of graphs you use? So you can use percentages, or you want to measure for continuous data. You want to measure location, mean, median, variation if you want to locate, categorical data, as an ordinal or nominal, it could be there, bar charts, clustered bar. And here you see in continuous data, if it is for graphs, histogram, box plot, or dot plot, these are different tools that you have for. See, we say a picture speaks 1,000 words. So what kind of graphs will you apply? Now this chart, if you take and sit a little longer in a pensive way and ponder over it, I'll tell you, it will give you a lots of idea which tools are to be applied there. The nature of data is continuous, is it categorical? Forget about the survival part at this point. Kaiser Mayer and all, we're not doing it, but I think the syllabus can be confined to most of these tests that are there, right? I'll also follow up with another set. How do you do it? By using maybe some theory part of it, I'll relate. Now, this is something which you find in one of the software packages, MATLAB. It tells you when the nature of data is nominal, hypothesis for association, if there are 2 or more measures, use coefficient of contingency. If the hypothesis of difference, if it is sample is independent or dependent, if there are 2 or more measures, you use chi-square. If there are 2 or more measures, it is dependent kind of sample, you use a McNamara, which is a variant of chi-square. If the nature of data is ordinal, you use a Spearman R, okay? Then there is something called as the other test, Spearman is for non-parametric. Then you say if it is, see the hypothesis association. Association is between attributes. And difference is between what we call it as the variables, right? So I say sample selection is independent or dependent. Here you have 2 measures or more than 2 measures. We use ANOVA, Wilcoxon t-test. Be careful with this small t and Wilcoxon. This is capital T. Small t is parametric. Wilcoxon capital T is a non-parametric, right? Kruskal-Wallis is head test. Mann-Whitney is a U test. More than 2 measures. Then 2 measures only. This is samples are drawn independently. What do you mean by that is when you draw a sample, drawing a sample does not affect the other elements of the population. So that is where we say independent and dependent. The nature of data is the interval in nature. If it is association kind of tests or difference kind of tests. We say there is no difference, there is association. If the number of measures are greater than 2, we say multiple R, okay? Multiple regression, we say Pearson R. So there is something called a Spearman R, which is non-parametric. And this is something to do with a parametric, which is called as a Pearson R. And here you look ANOVA, pairedity, depending on whether it is independent or dependent. Independent 2 measures, independent t-test, greater than 2, this one. Pairedity, wherein we call it as after and before test, we do a paired t-test. And greater than 2 measures, we call it as an ANOVA f-test. So this is something where we go about with applying. I don't want to get more, again, a little on what this test of association, test of differences are. In both, you get proportions that are there. And again, a small summary on what this parametric and non-parametric are. So we talk about parametric, 1 sample, 2 sample, t-test, z-test we have. Independent, again, we have a 2 group or a 2 sample t-test. We have a pair t-test. Non-parametric, there is a whole lot of things that are available. These are also some examples that you have there. Okay, so it was trying to give you a presentation of what are the tools of analysis that you'll be applying there. You can unmute and ask me, or if I can put any questions in the chat, I'm willing to take. Somebody wished me. It may be at 2:47 there. Okay, that's fine. But if you have any queries, you can put it in the chat. I've opened the chat box. And you want to ask me by unmuting, you can do that. Either way, but careful. Don't collide with one another while asking the questions. Whoever is there, you can ask me the question.
Provide the PPT.
Yeah, ma?
Can you please provide the PPT?
Oh, I'm going to do it more than 100% there.
Thank you
I'll
so
provide
much,
the PPT. I'll share some ebooks, what I said, which will supplement your research methodology as well as your statistics for management course. The soft
Thank
copy
you
of
so
Uma
much.
Sekaran, of what is that I said, Naresh Malhotra, and some of the books that are there, e-copies, e-books that are there, I'm going to share with Anand Pawar sir. Any other questions coming? No questions? Okay, thank you. What was said by Shweta from TU, that is Telangana University, is it? Okay. Anybody else? Anything in the chat? Any questions you want to unmute and ask, please ask me. There are a lot of faculty members from St. Anne's, I think, there. Okay, I'm not getting any question there. So I'll leave it to Anand Pawar, sir. Thank you so much, sir, for the opportunity, and to Kiran, my ma'am, for all the guidance that I'm getting over the years in writing the material for Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, and whatever opportunities I get to come offline and interact with the scholars there. Thank you so much, sir and ma'am.
Thank you very much, Professor Patrick, sir. And a very enlightening session. And actually, what myself and Pawar we are discussing is if the session is offline, really marvelous.
Ma'am, thank you, ma'am. Sir.
So thank you. So students, no doubts from your side? Okay. Then thank you, sir. Thank you, Professor Patrick. And if there is anything, we'll just send to the if they have any doubts. Yeah, please, sir. Please. So thank you.
I'll take leave.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Happy learning to all the participants there.
Thank you. Thank you, Patrick.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Okay, then it's my pleasure to start the last session in the today's program. Last but one, of course, for the interaction is there, if the participants want. And the last session is on how to write a project report. And the resource person for this session is Professor Anand Pawar, colleague in the faculty. And of course, it's my pleasure to introduce about Pawar. Professor Pawar is the Dean Faculty of Commerce and Business Management since last 4 years. And he's also the Chairman Board of Studies, Faculty of Commerce and Business Management, and he is a head department of Business Management also. And Professor Pawar has recently received the State Meritorious Best Teacher Award from Telangana State in 2022 from the Government of Telangana. He obtained his doctoral degree in management from Usmania University. Professor Pawar did MCOM, MBA, and MPhil. Professor Pawar has guided several doctoral and master's dissertations on various issues and topics, and at present, 8 research scholars are working under his guidance for PhD. Pawar has published 13 books on various contemporary issues, and he is the editor and associate editor for more than 70 books in commerce management and also healthcare management fields. In terms of research publications, he has published more than 100 research articles in various national and international journals, including Scopus and ABCD indexed journals. Professor Pawar is also a member in the Board of Studies of several other academic universities and also institutions. And at present, Pawar is serving as Director Center for the Staff Training and Development of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar University, and is organizing various training programs very useful to the staff, both teaching as well as non-teaching. He has presented papers and chaired in more than 60 national and international conferences, seminars, and workshops, and he visited foreign countries to share his expertise in the area of ODL, Open Distance Learning System. He is on the editorial board for the journals of international and national repute as an associate editor, editorial board member, and Professor Pawar has been associating as a life member in various institutes. He is also a corporate trainer for several public and private sector companies like BHEL, BEL, KAPL, BTC, JES, and for a professional career, and also whereas he is a visiting professor to several business schools. Pawar is also a frequent panelist in presenting live teleconference programs of our university and being prolific author. Professor Pawar contributed a rich knowledge bank in the form of books, journals, design and development of course material, research and project reports, and also radio and television talks and lectures. And he's actually excelling himself in the field of both academic as well as administration in our university. And now I request Pawar to start his session. So far, we covered what is the importance of project report, how to prepare the synopsis, and various how to collect data analysis tools and analysis. Stage in the project. Thank you, Pawar.
Excuse me, sir, you are muted.
Sir, you are muted. We are unable to listen your voice.
Yeah. Is it okay now?
Yes, sir, fine.
Yeah. So before we proceed further about how to write a project report, let me introduce you what is project report. Project report is a comprehensive document which consists of project or report objectives, data collected for the purpose, data analysis, interpretation, and then finding some study findings, that is conclusions, and then how to summarize the suggestions based on the study findings. And all these can be made into one comprehensive document. We call it as project report. So friends, we all of us know project report starts with identification of the problem and then developing some objectives. Say in case of project report, there may be 3 to 4 objectives, not more than that. Even in case of PhD level doctoral work, we focus on 5 to 6. So imagine what would be the scope for project report, which is a micro in nature. So it is less than 1/4 of the project PhD level work. So we can imagine that PhD thesis is about 300 pages and project report is all about 50 pages or 50 to 60 pages. Not much more than that, because if you develop more the pages of report, it will have repetition and unworthy content. So our focus should be useful information should be presented in the form of a particular document, which is the lifeline, useful life throughout the life, useful, particularly those who are going for employment. Definitely this project report, what they have done, definitely useful in selecting the companies for their as their potential employee. So it is useful not only for the fulfillment of MBA degree or diploma degrees, but also useful for the career opportunities and career planning. So these are the two streams of advantages of project report. One is fulfillment of your academic requirement, that is which required for 100 marks for project report and 100 marks Viva Voce examination. And second outcome of this project report would be, it would be helpful for you in presenting yourself or projecting yourself before the company where you are going to be a potential candidate or prospective candidate. So based on your past work, that is experiential learning, we call it. The very purpose of project report preparation is learning some experienced based learning through some case analysis or some observations may be made at a particular organization level. So this will definitely help you in selecting you as a potential employee for any company, because it gives you internal organizational insights, which is abundant knowledge for you, which makes you to sell yourself in the open market. So this is how we talk about project purpose, and then how we should proceed with project report. Since morning, we have been talking about how to write a project proposal, what are the methods and two techniques that are supposed to be used in project report level. But this is all about how to prepare a project report. Until and unless you get approved your project proposal, you cannot start working on your project report. So remember, proposal approval is essential part in the project report preparation. Like, for example, for lighter way, if you are interested, definitely project report approval is like an engagement before the marriage, and project report is real marriage now. Until and unless you engage yourself, that is, engagement is done, you cannot proceed further marriage, because the engagement is enable the prospective partners to understand each other. And there would be at least 1 month, 2 month break time before marriage. It is all to understand each other from background, knowing each other and all that. Similarly, project synopsis is also a kind of proposal to make you understand yourself and make the department to understand that you are a potential candidate and you know something, how to go about your project report. So that makes us to understand you that, yeah, you can do it. Otherwise, what happens, there is no understanding what we required at the department and what you have with you. So without taking synopsis approval, you cannot proceed further. That is the first step. After taking approval, you are officially engaging with us. Means after approval, you can start your work. Because in case of marriage, without engagement, you cannot start working on preparation of marriage. Like similarly, in case of project report preparation also, what we need to do is first you get approval, where you will get some inputs, identification of topic, how to write objectives, and how to sample size, write sample size, what is the limitations of the study, scope of the study, period of the study, and all that. And after getting approval, you have to start working on your project report. And project report is a document which consists of 50 to 60 pages, not more than that. Please remember. So earlier we used to focus on 80 to 100 pages, but nowadays we cut down the quantity, but because we want quality. So whenever we talk about quality, as much as you produce the material, it won't fulfill any requirement. But few pages is enough. For example, synopsis. When you get approved your synopsis, it is perspective, because in synopsis, what you will do, data will be collected. If you convert it to past tense, it will become chapter 1 in your project report. So data has been collected. Sample size would be minimum 100 in case of any project. Wherever you are going to take your project report, your sample size should be not less than 100. For example, if you take the example of IGNOU has made National Open University, Indira Gandhi National Open University, they made it 200 as a simple sample size minimum. But we are not emphasizing more on that, but minimum 100 sample size is required. And now, here onwards, we request all the research guides and the students to focus on sample size. So before saying what is sample size, what is sample population is also important. For example, if you are taking an exam case study of ICICI Bank or SBI Bank, you must know, when you are talking about 100 as your sample size, you must know what is the total employees or customers base that you are going to consider for your study. Without knowing sample population, you cannot determine the sample size. So after writing the project, starting the project report, you have to talk about chapter 1. There must be chapter 4 or maximum 5. Chapter 1 is always introduction. which is already there with you, that is abstract or proposal, what you have already taken approval, you can convert it to past tense, it will become chapter 1, wherein your objectives are same, your topic should be same, everything should be same, and the same copy you have to enclose at the end of your project report. So remember, this is very important. You cannot take approval for one topic and you cannot work on other topic, because it is like same, you know. So wherever, that's why, that is the purpose, is that, the what topic, what are the objectives, what are the content that you have provided in the synopsis should be taken further without any deviation, but only expansion it is required. Then chapter 2 would be always about theoretical framework of the topic. And then chapter 3 is about company profile. Company profile, whatever company you are taking for. And chapter 4 would be always data analysis and interpretation. So already statistical tools, how to use, what are the types of statistical tools are available, how to use them all are discussed by Professor Patrick just now. And now this chapter is all about data analysis, where you have collected data, make them tabulation, and if required, give the figures, and then interpretation about one paragraph. For each table, there must be one paragraph interpretation. One table, one figure or chart, and then interpretation. And all these three, table, figure or chart and interpretation, should be in a single page. So for example, your questionnaire consists of 10 questions minimum. So 10 tables will be there. Besides these 10 tables of data analysis, there would be demographic profile also will be there. Name of the employee, designation, age, gender, profession, income, and so on. That can be made a separate table or together one table. But when it comes to your questionnaire, main questions should have minimum 10 questions and maximum can be 20 questions. So based on this questionnaire, in case of primary data, you have to analyze the data wise, you have to tabulate, give a figure or chart, and then interpretation. For all the 10 questions, 10 tables, it is giving 10 pages, not less than 10 pages. So it is the chapter 4 data analysis. Definitely there would be 10 pages minimum if 10 questions are there. If the questions more, definitely more pages will be there, and it should not exceed more than 20 pages. So your first chapter, introduction chapter, is about 10 pages. Profile is all about 5 to 10 pages. And this project analysis table, chapter 4 or 3 in case of if the theoretical framework is not there. So it would be either chapter 3 or chapter 4. It is the base and body of the research. The entire gamut of your project report will be presented in the chapter 3 or 4, depending on the title of the project report. For example, when you are talking about HR project, there would be a chapter 1 introduction, common to all. Chapter 2 is existing policies of performance appraisal, for example, recruitment and selection, for example, or employee welfare measures, for instance. So you have to give some comprehensive knowledge and tools and techniques, methods in which you have to present in a particular chapter called theoretical framework or existing policies, whatever way it is possible. And when it comes to chapter 3, that is profile of the company, it should be not less than 5 pages and not exceeding 10 pages. So wherein you have to present origin of the company, product, vision, mission, and products of that company, and if possible, network of the company through which distributors and sellers, retailers, dealers, they are engaging in. And then you have to present what is the success of that company until the organization structure of the organization structure, means who is the chairman, managing director, then what is general manager, managers, subordinates, and so on. Some structure will be there. So this is how you have to present about chapter 3. It is known as what? Profile of the company. You have to use profile of the dash company, whatever company you choose. Don't write profile of the company. We are saying profile of the company because we are not aware of the company which you are going to take up. So you have to make a mention that profile of dash company. Reliance Info or Tata Consultancy Services or SBI Life Insurance or SBI Bank, whatever it is. And when it comes to chapter 4, it would be main body of the document or project report, wherein you have to present all demographic profiles of the respondents. It may be customers, it may be employees, it may be anybody else for the purpose you are taking as an analysis part, wherein you have to use suitable statistical tools as suggested by Professor Patrick. Using statistical tool till now is not mandatory, but hereafter it is mandatory, because we want to validate your study, whether it is whatever you are analyzed is true or false. So you can also ascertain whether the data collected is suitable, whether the data analysis is correct, whether the inferences drawn are valid or not. So you can check your validation of the project report by using or applying some statistical tool, and which is accepted particularly universally. Because if you present some tabulation form without any statistical tool, it may vary the perception and understanding of the person to person, because your understanding is that, but the reader's understanding may not be that much comfortable. So to validate the data what you have used in the project report or any research for that matter, you have to validate with by using some statistical tool. That is valid because there is no any bias in the data. Otherwise, you can inflate the data. So through statistical tool, even if you inflate the data, it can be validated suitably. And this is how we have to prepare project report about chapter 3, data analysis. And then, which is not last, but the very important part of the project report is conclusions, findings, and suggestions. So there is a big confusion in the minds of the students that what is conclusion and what is findings. Is these two are different or same? Definitely different. Conclusions are individual interference or perceptions, whereas findings are conclusions drawn from the statistical tools used. There is a lot of difference. Conclusion, for example, if you take a table wherein gender group is presented, male and female, for example, 48% female and 52% is male. As a researcher, I can infer conclusion like this: majority are female, male. But other presenter can be interpreted in a way differently, because she or he may be presenting that 48% of female employees, therefore this company is not engaging female employees. More female employees may be employed. That way also can be presented. Means the conclusion drawn can be different from person to person. Therefore, it is not standard. It is individual perception. So though it is based on table, but it is not finding. So that is the slight difference between the project conclusion and finding. Finding is when you talk about statistical tool use. Before using the statistical tool, what we do, we develop some statement which is known as hypothesis, right? What is hypothesis? It is a presumption or hypothetical question that there will not be any relationship between particular facilities provided for the employees and satisfaction level of the employees. For example, is there any relationship between employee welfare measures provided by the company and satisfaction of that company employees? Sometimes result may come, employees are not happy. It means inadequate employee welfare measures is being provided by the company. So what is your suggestion based on that? And sometimes the services or welfare measures provided by the company is, if it is adequate, result would be they are satisfied. Majority of them are satisfied, and it is statistically proved that there is a relationship between two factors. What is two factor? What are the two factors? One is services or measures taken by the company, welfare of the company, employee welfare, and the second variable is employee satisfaction. If there are employee welfare measures, there will be satisfaction. If there are no employee welfare measures, there is no satisfaction. So that is what we are going to find out. So that is hypothesis. So when you use statistical tool, depending on the objective and the data you collect, you have to apply test and find out the result. That result is valid result without any bias. When you present your personal interpretation, that is conclusion, there may be some bias. But when it comes to finding, it is bias-free finding. Therefore, so conclusions are premature statements, whereas findings are matured statements. So this is how we have to infer the analysis for all the important and relevant tables in the chapter 3 or 4, where we take up the analysis part. So friends, there would be 10 questions or 20 questions depending on the topic and the scope. However, we need not to apply all statistical tools or whatever statistical tool that you apply, but all the tables or all the questions. No, you can apply 2 or 3 or at least one table which is most relevant for the objective and also your hypothesis that framed for the purpose of testing the hypothesis. So this is how we have to present the findings, conclusions and findings. And friends, last part of the project report and last chapter is about, third part of the last chapter is suggestions. Suggestions should emerge from the conclusions and findings, not general. Most of the students, generally what they do is, they draw general suggestions from elsewhere and they present there in their project. No. See, for example, there are 10 conclusions, 5 findings. Your suggestion should not exceed 15 at any cost. And sometimes it can be lesser than that. For example, there are 10 conclusions and 5 findings, means 15 inferences are there with you. You can develop not more than 15 suggestions, and all findings not required suggestions for that matter. But minimum 10 findings should be there, suggestions should be there. And that suggestion should be related to your findings and conclusions. And those findings and conclusions should draw from the respective tables, the chapter 3 or 4, where we have analyzed the data analysis. So this is the relationship between chapter 1 to 2. Chapter 1 is introduction. Chapter 2 is theoretical framework. Broader to narrow down. So then profile of the company, then analysis, then conclusion, finding, and then suggestion. So macro to micro, it is coming down like this. So not less than 5 suggestions, but those suggestions should be valid and authenticated. Then only the purpose of the project is fulfilled. Otherwise, something we have written in the chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, and something we are writing here as conclusion, suggestion, finding and suggestion, there should be match. There should not be any mismatch between these all the chapters from chapter 1 to 5 or 4, whatever it is. It is not mandatory to take chapter 5. It can be 4 or it can be 5. So friends, what about when you are talking about this project report, chapter 1 can be about 10 pages, chapter 2 can be 10 pages, chapter 3 is also about 10 pages, but project body, which is data analysis chapter, should be 20 pages, not more than that. Plus or minus 2-3 pages, okay. So 20 pages, 30 pages, and this 20-50 pages, and last finding and conclusion, it can be maybe 2 to 5 pages, not more than that, because last chapter may not be going beyond 5 pages. It is very highly impossible to make what you call big chapter. It is a 2 pages minimum, because 1 page is conclusion, another page is suggestions. So minimum 2, it can go up to maximum 5 if you describe the suggestions in a broader sense. If you expand, if you are able to expand more in detail, then it would come 3, 4, 5 pages also. But don't focus much on that. A brief and clear, brief and concise suggestion is always better, and presenting well manner is always desirable in the project report, because the entire project report. And when it comes to project Viva House examination, we focus on all the chapters right from the introduction, from where we talk about what is objective, title of the study, what are the objectives, what are the scope of the study, what is the methodology that you have adopted, and what are the major findings and suggestions. So your project presentation, Viva House examination depends on mostly on chapter 5 or 4. That is findings and suggestions. So if your work is original and done by you, definitely you can present well, no doubt about it, which makes you, when you prepare on your own project report originally, without depending on anybody else, you can take the help of some statistician, colleagues, friends, your guide, but you cannot borrow project report as it is from the others. It is nothing but cheating yourself. You may be thinking that teachers of the university may not be knowing it. We know all projects, whether from first sentence onwards, first line onwards to last line, we can determine one single line. If we read, we'll come to know that whether it is done by you or not. But in most of the cases, teachers are most liberal people, in the world. We excuse everybody irrespective of the kind of mistake you commit. Because if you commit mistake in a traffic, police people will catch you. Even if you commit some small mistake outside anywhere, definitely some punishment will be there. But teachers will not punish you, maybe caution you, because we are the most excusable people, in the world, on the planet in a way. Because, to my knowledge of, out of my 25 years of experience, I never seen in my life, no student was given bad conduct certificate. Did you see anybody? Definitely no. Because that is the teachers are very generous. We don't punish generally. But what happens when we don't punish? What happens? You keep on committing same mistakes repeatedly. When you repeat the same mistake continuously, it will become a habit. When it will become a habit, you will not try to know what you intend to know or what you are interested to know. Because, you cannot blame anybody else, because our environment is like that. So my friends they are doing something else, therefore why should not I? No. When others are doing something wrong, you have to learn from their mistake and try to correct yourself and present it in a precise manner. Small project report, 40 pages is also okay. But it should be original. And when you carry your project report, you should feel proud of it, like our own baby. Carrying one's baby is different, and carrying our own baby is different. Feeling will be there, right? Similarly, when you carry others' book, you may carry in a different way. But when you carry your own book, you take it to heart, you touch it to heart. You carry like this book, like this, not just like throw and using. No. So be confident. When you are confident, definitely when you contribute something on your own. So try to write your own report and learn something out of it and realize the purpose or reach the goal of learning by practice, learning by experience, learning by doing something. And this is what exactly the management, education is expecting from you, or MBA graduates are expected to do. Generally, and this is also advocated by NEP, National Education Policy 2020. Nowadays, project report is mandatory for all the programs, whether it is professional or not. Earlier, even till day, only MBA, BBA, or some other engineering, some other professional programs have project report, because to give them some practical industry-ready information or knowledge. But now, NEP, National Education Policy, made it mandatory, whether you are a graduate or postgraduate or diploma holder, whatever, and whether you are a BA person, student, or BCom person, student, or BSc, or anything else, project report is mandatory, because the education policy gives emphasis on experiential learning, practical learning by visiting the organizations. So when you learn, definitely you will have knowledge. That knowledge gives you confidence. That confidence makes you to present yourself not only before the Viva board, but also before the potential company where you are going to be employ potential candidate for interview. So don't take it easy and give some importance to it. Definitely you will become a confident person, and definitely this will be useful in your career throughout your life also, because tomorrow this project report alone may get you some recognition in the future. Who knows what happens in the future? Definitely your company may ask you what is your project report was. If you present, if it is your own, you will definitely present. Otherwise, you always keep it elsewhere, and you may keep saying that I lost it, I missed it. But when you do your own, definitely you will keep your project report always ready with you. So it is a original report. So ensures you not only will gain knowledge, but also which gives you confidence and also makes you a very good potential candidate for employment. So this is what about the project report, which consists of 50 to 60 pages, not more than that. Even 50 pages, 40 pages is also enough. But all these 4 chapters should be there in it. And finally, a summary should be given wherein your brief introduction about this, about the synopsis, what you have covered, and then some tools and techniques that you have used, and how it is going to be useful. For example, we call it after doing project report, you may get some, before or after, you may get some doubts like, what is the size of the project report? Size is, it can be a 40 pages, it can be a 50, or it can be a 60. But it is not number, it is the quality of content that you produce is the important matter. Number 2 is, who are the users of this project report? Definitely, as students, you may not be realizing or understanding the use of this project report, but there are takers or users of this project report. First, you are the user. As a student, you are going to get out of 200 marks, you may be getting almost 120 to 150 without much preparation, but gaining practical knowledge, which makes you to score much better in your final year or final semester examination, which gives you good score. And next, your company where you have undertaken your study is also users, because they may understand some problems which are encountered by the company and identified and pointed out by your study. So if it is valid suggestions that you have given, definitely company will implement and try to comply with those suggestions. It means they can correct their mistakes, if any. So this is how your project report is also useful for the company from where you have undertaken your study. And finally, there are users, customers may also read your project report, and your junior students will also may look at your project report, because they have to undertake project report in the future, no? So definitely they may refer your project report. If it is valid, definitely they will remember and approach. And they may disturb you to inquire about how to do it and how you did it and all that. Definitely when student approach you, that indicates that your project report is quality and good one. So if you did not receive any letter, call from any your junior students or teachers or anybody else for that matter, it indicates that your project report submitted by you is useful for you only, but not anybody else. So it should be useful for all as much as possible. Not only your academic fulfillment of academic program, but also it should be useful for the company. It is also useful for the next generation, that is junior students of you, and also the takers, like any customers, companies, and all that. So next one is, see, when you take a topic of, job satisfaction of employees, for example, or marketing, what do you know, customer satisfaction towards digital marketing or digital banking. So what are the implications are there in digital banking? What are the usefulness are there in digital banking? What are the problems being faced by customers, frauds, and all these things are taking place in banking, digital banking. We are all aware. So how do we know about it until unless we conduct study? Therefore, this kind of study will helpful for customer and general public, customers as well as general public, to know about what are the problems arising out of the issue that you take up for the study. So when you talk about all these, you have to also talk about limitations of your study. See, when you take in a topic of your study, you cannot cover every aspect and everything about that topic. Whatever you cannot cover, you have to make it as a limitation of the study. But don't write your limitation in the chapter 1. Because if you write in your synopsis and chapter 1, that indicates that you are not going to do it deliberately. No, that is not limitation. Limitation should be given in the last chapter. Because after doing all these data collection, analysis, interpretation, all that, which you could not accommodate in the project report, that you have to mention as a limitation. So after doing research only, we will be able to know what are the limitations of our study. If you write it before the writing report, that indicates that you are intended to avoiding some aspects not to study upon. So don't do that. And all the research supervisors, please make a note of it and guide the students suitably. And then one more question arises out of doing our project report is, how do we identify the originality? How do we identify whether it is done by somebody else or not? How do we identify this study is going to be useful? Very, very important and final question in your project report. Number 1, how do we identify it is original study? If it is primary data, obviously it is a original study. In case of some secondary data, also possible, there is a possibility of originality, because when you measure performance appraisal, when you work on working capital management, as cost control techniques, when you take all these data relating to the company, that is all original. Therefore, whatever the study you conduct based on the available data, that would be original study, no doubt about it. And how do we check whether this kind of study is done by earlier or not? That is the purpose why we have included one small piece of topic where we have to review some review of literature, means previous similar studies on the topic. These review of literature may be 10 to 15, as mentioned by Professor Kiranmai during her presentation. So, review of literature means similar study done by earlier researchers. It may be a project report, it may be a research article, it may be a MPhil degree, it may be a PhD degree, whatever it is available to you. If you get, if you go into that Google with your topic, you will get n number of articles. Take them, write in a precise manner what they did in a paragraph, 10 lines. Of 10 lines, that is your review of literature. 10 lines each for 10 to 15, about 5 pages, 4 to 5 pages. That is the basis for your study. That indicates your study is originated based on your identification of the problem. So if you have written review of literature, that indicates itself it is a original study. Without review of study, you did not check it whether this kind of studies are taken place or not. Therefore, your study may not be original. So you can check with this review of literature also. And then you have to give the references. After all these chapters of 4 or 5, whatever it is, you have to give the references or bibliography where all the references from where you used, whether it is downloaded from the website, give the website source. If you are taken one study, you give the acknowledgement to the author, title, publication, publisher, and year of the study, and all that in 2 to 3 pages or whatever it is, depending on your study. So, without review of literature, what you call references, again, your study is not going to confirm that it is your original study. For example, when it comes to secondary data based study, working capital management, you take annual reports of the company. So mention the annual reports of so and so year to so and so year as a reference, because you have used in your analysis part. So one should not miss the data from where you have taken and utilized. We have to acknowledge in the form of references or bibliography. What is the difference between references and bibliography? References are those references used from the net and journal research, whereas bibliography is textbooks, websites, and reports, for example, RBI reports in case of banking. So, which are already secondary in nature, documented in nature. You can use it wherever it is required, but you have to acknowledge from where you have taken the data. So in the form of bibliography, you can give the title of the book, author, publisher, from which book you are taken. For example, working capital management, financial management book by Pandey, or by Prasanna Chandra, or by Ashwatappa, whatever, whoever may be. So you have to acknowledge to the authors from whose contribution, from whose work you are utilized for the purpose of your project report. So we should not miss out the acknowledging the authors and the contributors for the study, because without whose data and information, our study would not have been completed. That is how we have to be very thankful and grateful to them, and we have to acknowledge their name and the detailed information at the end of the project report. And finally, in case of both primary and secondary data, in case of primary data, you have to enclose the questionnaire without fail. Questionnaire it may be a 1 page or 2 page, but with the help of questionnaire only we collect the data. So how you collected, it must be known to the readers. So it must be included at the end of the project report, after the synopsis, references, synopsis, and then questionnaire. In case of secondary data, you can use some tables or annual reports taken from the company or organization, if required. If it is essential, if you feel it is required, but we should not miss out the enclosing the necessary documents. So all these things, your project report is maybe around 50 pages plus or minus, and another 5 pages about your synopsis, 2 pages about your references, 2 pages about 2 to 3 pages about your questionnaire. Altogether, it is again 10 pages. So your project report, 50 pages plus 10 pages. It is not more than 60 pages. So when you concise with very planned and systematic manner, right from the chapter 1 to appendix, that is annual reports or questionnaire, whatever you have to enclose at the end of the report, it will not be called as report. And all these comprehensive, as I mentioned in the initial, what is the project report? Project report is a comprehensive document. Comprehensive means everything which is essentially required to prepare and make your project report useful and fruitful. So without missing anything out of these, this is not a project report. So a submission to all of you, and I advise all of you to follow these guidelines. Without fail, definitely this project report will be quality, original, and knowledgeable for you, and which makes you, as I told you earlier, confident. And it is very, very easy for you to face the Viva House examination when it is done by you. You can take inputs here and there from your guide, from friends, from maybe company, managers, wherever it is required. But you have to have your own understanding about your preparation of project report. Then only you can own it. You can present it in a simple and easy manner without any bias and without any fear before the Viva House examination. So all these are precautions that which are required before you start writing about project report and submit in hard bound format, not spiral binding, which is not accepted by the university, because we have made it very compulsory that the spiral binding, other bindings are not acceptable, only hard bound. It is everywhere, bounding is known to all of you. And if you don't have any idea, you can approach any candidate who did MBA, or if you can also acquire from your guide friends, or if possible to the department of this university also. So we are here to help you how to do it and all that. But only thing is you have to have your interest, zeal, and desire to do on your own work, which is most useful, not only for the academic accomplishment, but also personal satisfaction. So this is all about project report. If you have any, doubts about the project report, I am here to interact with you and address your queries or doubts. So please feel free to interact, and I want as much interaction as possible from you. Now the session is open for interaction. Please feel free to ask any questions. Please. Otherwise, it will become one-way traffic. The very purpose of this webinar is to make you aware of how to write a project report, how to make it useful and knowledgeable for you. So don't take it easy. Please, questions, please. Yeah. How many copies? One question came from, I think, some student or maybe teacher also. How many copies you have to prepare? Yeah, it depends. University requires you have to submit one copy in the department. One copy should be with you, and rest of the copies depends on your guide and the company. If your company where you undertake the report project, if they ask, or if you feel that it is good to submit, you can submit. And if your guide wants a copy, you have to submit, whether he want it or not, to offer. If he say or he or she says no, then not required. So minimum 2, maximum 4. 2 copies compulsory, that is candidate copy, and 1 copy submitted in the department for Viva House examination. 2 is mandatory, and rest of the 2 is optional. If the company feels good or your guide wanted a copy, you have to give it. It is compulsory. You cannot say no. But minimum 2, maximum 4, not more than that. Yeah. Any questions?
Sir, is guide is from our university or else?
Along with the CD.
Yeah. And one more question somebody is asking. What is that question, please? One CD is mandatory. After everything is corrected, you try to make it FD or PDF format, if possible. You are aware of. Even Word file is also problem, but try to make it PDF and convert it into CD form. And the same CD you have to attach with the project report submitted to the department. And it is mandatory. Without project CD, your project will not be accepted.
Regarding the company, we would like to say that we are not specific about any company. Yeah. The student is allowed to select any company of their choice, where it is easier for them to collect data. But normally for employees, we suggest them to take their own company where they are working. So really, it's a contribution to the company or the organization which they are working.
Yeah. Choice of the company is yours. That is student. If you don't have any information or access to any company, you take the input from your guide or friends or even from the department if possible, because we don't have any list of companies. It is a global choice. You can take your own company and from any place, but it is preferably from your local. The guide is from our university or elsewhere. Yeah. Guide is, guide is also, you have option to choose. As I mentioned in the earlier, you can approach any professor, commerce or management professor in any university in both the states, AP and Telangana. You take Telangana University, you take Shatavana University, you can take Andhra University or any university professors, we don't have any. Number one. Number two, we will provide you recognized project supervisors list to you. You can approach them depending on their specialization and interest, but you cannot force them to accept. Number three, you can also choose the guide from where you are working. If you are working, your boss is MBA or MCOM, he may be a manager or supervisor or anybody else. With MBA degree, you can also choose them as guide. However, you have to provide his CV and MBA degree certificate to certify that he is eligible to guide project report.
My suggestion here is please see the guidelines, the project report guidelines. It is very clearly mentioned who can act as a project guide.
Yes,
you can choose
it is
anyone.
clearly mentioned in the project report guidelines. Everything is there. Again, you are asking. Yeah, other than project report guidelines, you can ask the question.
And somebody is asking about the topic. Are we required to choose a topic from the list, or you can choose any topic?
Yes.
This is only the indicative list provided by the department.
Yes. What I would like to say is the given topics are only tentative topics. Just for idea's sake, we are giving you some 20 topics from each area of specialization. You need not to take them. You can take any topic of your choice. We are just trying to give some idea how to arrive at a topic. You can take anything else. You can approach a company or guide can also give, but try to take emerging and innovative topics rather than taking existing and old topics.
And sometimes companies may ask the candidate to do some research on the given area. They want some input from research.
Yeah, regarding one question from the student is like this, what is the limitations of the guides? Yeah, very good question. We have given in the guidelines, it is also there, not exceeding 8 members under one guide. One research supervisor can guide up to 8 numbers. So beyond 8, one cannot guide. So that is the rule. It is also
the body session also be covered.
Yes, it is also there in your annexure. 1 to 8 number is given, where you have to, guide has to mention the names of the students that he or she is guiding. So not more than 8 students under one guide. Any questions? See, after giving guidelines, after conducting this webinar for you, still if you ask the question tomorrow onwards, nobody will help you. And you try to make use of this opportunity. We are all attempting, we are making you to enlighten you. That is, you are the target for us. To make you easy how to go about your study, very smooth about your project approach. Yeah. Anything?
Admit card.
Any more questions?
For any question, there is an answer in your project guidelines. Of course, still we are answering, but whatever questions you have, answers are already given. You have to read and put the questions. You definitely will not find any questions. except
తెలుగులో చెప్పాలంటే అరటిపట్టు ఒలిచి
yes.
చేతిలో పెడుతున్నాము. ఆల్రెడీ పెట్టే గైడ్లైన్స్ లో ఉన్నది. ఒకసారి వాటిని చూసుకోవాలి, కేర్ఫుల్ గా చదువుకోవాలి అంతే.
Yeah, that is my question. How should I know who is less number of students? Yeah, no. Guide has to restrict the number, because if the ninth candidate approaches me, I should say as a guide, because I don't have vacancy, you approach another person. Guide has to tell it, not the student. Supervisor has to mention a list. You have to maintain some record. That is.
And research guides also, one more request is, normally while they are citing the election one, they are writing the name of that candidate only. No sir or madam. You have to mention the names of all the candidates working under their guidance for the given academic year.
In Annexure 1,
In Annexure 1,
the supervisor has to give a consent for the 8 numbers of the candidates, not other things. Name and number of the candidate. So guide has to restrict the number not beyond 8. If you take 9th candidate, automatically it will get rejected. Again problem, after doing all the exercises, it will go waste. So don't do that.
we will ask the candidate to change the guide.
Yeah, definitely we may have to ask the candidate to change the guide. No, you need not to approach all the guide. First of all, we'll give you a list of 50 supervisors, registered or recognized supervisors. You have to approach anyone and you have to tell them what is your specialization. If they are comfortable, they will accept your proposal.
If possible, add a specialization.
Yeah, we will try to give you the specialization also. Yeah, it is well taken. Before announcing the name of the supervisor, we will mention the specialization also, so that it is easy for you to interact. Yeah. Any questions? And now you can start working on this. Tomorrow we will have another important topic, case analysis. Very, very important for all the MBA students. Today, maybe, guides, teachers, and, practicing professors also may be joining this, how to guide and all that. Tomorrow, guides may not join. If they are interested, they can join and learn, because they are going to teach MBA student. Definitely, they must know how to write a case analysis. If they are interested, they can continue. But students are most important. Case analysis for 20 marks. All the question papers in all the subjects. So how to analyze the case is very, very important. And all 4 experts in the domain area we have invited, don't miss out tomorrow's session on case analysis. So,
and, if possible, we are going to post the cases that are going to discuss tomorrow in all areas,
yes,
in different areas,
and
so that you can become
participants
prepared.
are advised to make use of tomorrow's sessions. We are going to share all the cases, case studies and case leads to be discussed by the experts tomorrow. And those cases are very, very useful for you to understand and analyze the cases, and also helpful in your forthcoming examination. I think probably programs, examinations are going to start from November 15, and MBA will be little later, definitely. So definitely useful. Don't miss out. Any questions about today's session? Please feel free to interact.
Why actually the department scheduled actually devoted one whole day for case analysis is, normally in examinations, actually we are, while answering the question papers, we are seeing that, okay, question number 1, the student is repeating the paragraph number 1 of the case as an answer to the question. For question number 2, okay, repeat paragraph number 2. No, that's not. Case analysis, there is a systematic approach, and it is for 20 marks, and the highest you can score even up to 15 or 16 marks if the performance is good in your examinations. Yeah.
Sir, I am Kalyan from Hyderabad.
Yeah.
MBA and PG diploma students ki same guides untara sir, or PG diploma separate ఏమన్నా
అలా ఏముంటారండి, ఒకళ్ళే గైడ్స్ ఉంటారు.
ఓకే
గైడ్స్ ఒకళ్ళే ఉంటారు, అట్లా సపరేట్.
ఓకే థ్యాంక్ యూ.
If there are no questions, we'll wind up the session.
Actually, one session we actually thought of having interaction, but because it's almost an interaction, if there are no questions, no more interaction from the participants, we'll just close the session for the day, and tomorrow we'll start again.
Still, we are waiting for your queries or doubts from you.
No more? Okay, we are ending the session for the day. And let us take this opportunity to thank our administration for the Vice Chancellor, Registrar, Director Academic, and others who participated in the inaugural session, and to external resource persons, Professor Nageswarrao Garu and Professor Patrick, who really contributed a lot, tried to create an awareness about the project work. And okay, for the day, we are closing the session.
Yeah, thank you one and all for patient listening. I hope that you all learned something from today's session. And without your participation, this program would have not been successful. So we thank one and all, not only participants, but also there are teachers, faculty members from different institutions who are guiding our students, associating with our university for different purposes. And finally, we also thank the university administration for approval and the support extended by different branches in making this program a success. Yeah, one more question from student is, please post the format and list of report.
WhatsApp group lo
Right.
post cheyamantuda.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, okay, we'll do
it and we keep doing it. Only we
Okay, sir.
want
Thank you.
if we utilize it, we are more happy. Otherwise, even then we are keep doing our job without missing. Thank you one and all. Thank you so much. Love you all.
Thank you, sir.
Don't
Thank you.
forget that tomorrow we'll share that link.
Thank
Taking
you.
your feedback of the sessions, and also the participation certificate will be issued immediately.